Welcome to episode 19 of Dad Can We Talk. I'm your host, Anthony Ray. And today I have a guest coming to you all the way from Washington State. He is the director of the Fatherhood Academy, a place for all your dad essentials. Welcome to the show, Brandon Gregory. How are you, my man?
Thanks for having me on, man. It's an honor.
Oh, yeah, for sure, man. Well, a little bit how we met. One day this guy just DM'd me on Instagram and he's like, hey man, I like the shirts. I like what you're doing. And we just kind of talked from there, and I checked out his Instagram. I seen that he had this organization called the Fatherhood Academy. And I said to myself, I have to have this dude on. I mean, it's only right. So before we get into Fatherhood Academy, my first question that I like to ask everyone that comes on the podcast, I like to go back. I like to know, what was your relationship like with your dad?
Hey, man, that's a great question. It's actually one I ask a lot of guys, because our relationship with our dad a lot of times forms our ability to be dads. Mm-hmm. And my story is that I have three dads. Wow. I've got my adopted dad. Mm-hmm. Or no, sorry, let me start at the beginning. I've got my biological dad, I've got my adopted dad, and then I've got my stepdad.
Yeah.
The holidays in my world are a little bit chaotic because I've got a relationship with all three of them. And all three guys, they played a role in my life, but really with having three guys filling that fatherhood role for me, it kind of left me without a stable relationship with any of them. Mm-hmm. So I had a hard time kind of navigating the manhood conversation. Yeah. I was hitting the teenage years, and I had these three dads, and I was like, how do I be a man? And then I got married, and I was like, how do I do this relationship thing? And then I had kids, and I was like, holy crap, I don't really want to mess things up, because it left me with a lot of questions.
Yeah.
So my relationships with my dads, they were good. I know them all. I talk to them all. But none of them really were people that I could go to with my problems. None of them really were people that I could, feel comfortable sharing my beliefs with, my struggles with, my life with. It was always kind of a tentative, dramatic relationship. Unfortunately, I think that's a fairly common experience for people. And it really, because of all the chaos and drama that went on with the switching of relationships and the relationship interactions, it did leave my family in kind of dire straits a few times. Like, as my stepdad, my mom, their relationship was falling apart. Both people had to find a place to live, right? Mm-hmm. And my mom moved in with some family. My dad kept the house for a little bit, but then we were hopping back and forth between houses, the normal divorce stuff. Yeah. And that was an interesting experience, just because I was trying to keep peace while I was trying to figure out who I was, growing up as a teenager. And that's a hard thing to navigate as a teenager. I've got a better relationship with all three of them now than when I was a teenager. But, yeah.
That's a good thing, man. I mean, because when you look at that relation, I mean, I can see where you are with that, especially with saying that you have that better relationship now, because I didn't grow up with my dad, period.
Yeah.
And, but now, since I've become a father, it just made me really want to go back to him and really develop that relationship. And that was the driving force in me saying the fact that, I just started to realize that, man, even though I'm, even right now with being a 31-year-old, I need my dad still to this day. I need to be able to at least some way. I mean, I wouldn't say we have a father-son relationship.
Yeah.
It's more like a friendship, but it's better than nothing.
Absolutely.
And yeah, man. So that's definitely good to hear.
Yeah. So we just went through Father's Day a little while ago, and I caught myself again Father's Day is kind of a weird holiday for me because I want to celebrate it for myself as a dad now, but I've also got 3 guys. And I caught myself again thinking, man, wouldn't it be cool to have a good like a good, stable, normal relationship with my dad?
Mm-hmm.
Like that was never an opportunity I really had. And like that's a feeling, a thought that's come up in me over and over and over throughout the years, especially as things get dramatic around Thanksgiving or Christmas or Father's Day. And that's not a good feeling.
Yeah.
I right on. There is a desire in us, like a need for a father.
Yeah.
And we don't have that. We recognize that in the way that we process and do life.
Mm-hmm. That's good, man. I mean, and I can even go, I want to go here just for a quick second, because I know you talked about your 3 dads, you know, your biological, your adoptive, your stepdad, but then you also have a 4th dad, you know, in our Father in heaven, you know, and that was that one thing, you know, when I really came into the faith, and I remember a man telling me, you know, I was kind of talking about me growing up fatherless, and well, I was still fatherless, you know, and the guy was like, yeah, bro, you shouldn't say that, bro. He's like, don't say it anymore, because right now you do have a father. He was like, you have your Father in heaven who loves you and won't ever leave me. And I remember just like something snapped in me. I'm like, man, that's so real. It just, and when it hit me in that way, you know, and that was one of those things that really made me start seeking out that relationship with my dad, because I'm like, you know, I wouldn't say that I hated him, but I'm like, you know, God still loves him, you know, past his faults and his failures. And I had to begin to love him in that way and begin to just reach out with him. And can you talk about that, you know, your relationship with God and how that has affected your experience with fatherhood?
Yeah, man, that's such a good topic. That's such a good question. So I talk to a lot of guys about being a dad.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I hear from dads across the board, regardless of how they grew up, is most guys will have a list of things that they say, I'm never doing this to my kids, right? I'm never going to leave them. I'm never going to hit them. I'm never going to mistreat their mom. They've got a list, right?
Yeah, straight up.
I had a list of, like, I'm never doing this to my kids. And the problem that I ran into, that I realized I was running into when I first became a dad, was that I had a long list of things that I was never going to do with my kids, but I didn't know what I was going to do. Right? Just because I know what not to do doesn't mean I know what to do.
Exactly.
And so I realized that the source of me figuring out my identity as a man is actually found in Jesus Christ, right? The way I love my wife as a husband, that is modeled for me in the way that Jesus Christ loved the church and humanity.
Exactly.
Even when we were sinful, he loved us. Right? And thank God our mistakes and our dad's mistakes and their dad's mistakes don't hold them back from that, right? From that relationship. And the same can be said for me as a dad. The place that I have to turn to figure out what it means to be a good dad is actually Jesus.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because that's where I learn how to love. That's where I learn how to turn on my emotions and connect. That's where I learn how to communicate. That, like, there is no other place where we can look and find a healthy model for how to be a dad, for how to be a husband, and how to be a man. And that for me was absolutely essential. So the way I came to know Jesus was I was about 12, and I started questioning my purpose in life. I was like, why am I even on this world? Like, I don't really care about all the drama. I don't care about my grades. I didn't really have a lot of friends. And, you know, I was always nose deep in a book, but I didn't care about the stories. And so I started looking at different world religions. I loved Greek mythology. I love Celtic mythology. I loved all of these other religions in the way that they viewed the world. But then I had to ask the question, like, why am I here?
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that God had a purpose for me, and that the God who existed was actually the God of the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
He has revealed himself to us, even though we were sinners. And so, like, I love that. I love Jesus because he reached out to me and like took me on that journey of building that relationship with him.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and that is so dramatically impacted my learning who I am and what I'm supposed to do on this earth, including how I'm supposed to love my kids. Because I think that's one of the most powerful journeys that we as men go on, is figuring out how to love other people and connect to them in a real way.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir, man. And there's nothing. I find it hard, like I always think to myself, if I didn't understand my spiritual being, I wouldn't know how to love my children. I wouldn't know what patience looked like. I wouldn't know where to draw that patience from, because it's a very difficult thing, even with knowing all of the things that I know, or maybe what it's still hard, and the only thing literally that keeps me sometimes, I'm like, man, it's like God always brings me back, after I tell my kids 5,000 times the same thing: clean up the living room, clean up the things off the floor, get the food. And I'm like, I can't say it any different way. Clean up. And then they still don't do it. And then in that moment of me being angry, God would always remind me, man, you're just the same way.
Yeah.
You're the same way, man. You say you're not gonna do something and you still do it. You say you're not even gonna think certain things and you still do it. And it always humbles me and helps me realize that, I'm not perfect either. I'm just like, in God's eyes, I'm just like my children. I'm a child that is disobedient. I don't do things that I should do, that I know I should do. And and it's something that it would literally keep you humble. It keeps me humble and helps me realize that, sometimes I just got to be graceful, with my children, and understand, man, at the end of the day, I got a 7-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 4-year-old. Of course they don't listen all the time. Like 20-year-old men that don't listen to a teacher or any sort of authority, and I'm getting mad with a 4-year-old, like, of course he doesn't listen all the time. Like, okay,
yeah. So when I got married, I talk about it like God took a magnifying glass, like a times 10 magnifying glass, and put it over my selfishness.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like my self-centeredness. I had to all of a sudden be responsible for and care about someone else's well-being.
Yeah.
And I became a dad. I feel like that magnifying glass turned from a times 10 to like a times 100.
Yeah.
Because like, man, it just shows you how selfish we are as people when there's someone in the other room sitting in their own poop at 3 a.m. crying for you, and you're like, man, I don't want to get up. What do you mean you don't want to get up? Right? They've got a diaper and they're uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But 3 a.m., I don't want to get up. And I think that's part of the learning curve of just like, as we learn to be men and husbands and fathers, we learn how to love and put aside our selfishness.
Yeah.
There is a very real thing, I believe, of being a man, husband, and father. That is a sacrificial thing. That is like, we are called to give up ourselves and put other people's needs in front of our own, and that's especially true of our family.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
And see, and what you just said right there, and I'm about to go into another subject, because what you just said was so important. Because in society nowadays, people don't look at fatherhood in that way. They look at it they look at mothers in that way, which is not a bad thing, but at times people look at motherhood like, oh, the mom is just always the one that sacrifices. You know, the mom sacrifices for her husband. You know, she sacrifices for the children. She's doing everything sacrificial for the home, but a dad should do the same thing, you know, and I think even more so than the mom, because we should definitely be, you know, we're not to be laid back like some kings, you know, and be served. You know, that's not what God called a dad to do. But I think that's
Right.
the way that society sort of looks at dads today, like we feel entitled or something. And it's like, no, like I'm not called to be, you know, I don't require my wife to make my plate for
Right.
me for dinner. Like I don't require that, because in reality, I should be serving her. I should be giving her her plate. I should be giving my children their plate. You know, this question came up to me before, once before, and a guy asked me. He said, "Who eats first in your home?"
Hmm.
And you know, he was just saying, me, like, I just like to get my plate first.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I could care less, bro. I don't care if I'm the last. Man, as long as I eat, my thing is I want to make sure my family is eating. I'm just thankful that we can put food on the table. Like
Yeah.
I'm of no more importance than my wife or my children, you
Right.
know. And if I have to wait for them to eat, I could care less. You know, I don't feel entitled or feel, you know, like I'm some superior. You know,
Yeah.
like no, you know, as fathers, we should be those people that serve. You know, that's what God has called us to do. And you know, I
Yeah.
don't think a lot of people look at fatherhood in that way today.
Yeah. So there was a movie that came out, I think back in the early 2000s. It's called Cinderella Man. Have you seen that one?
I've never seen that.
It's about a boxer back in the Great Depression. Fantastic movie about it's about a true life story. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a scene in that movie where the main character they don't have any money for food.
Mm-hmm.
And they all wake up for breakfast, and mom serves the daughter some bologna and serves dad some bologna, and she has some bologna, and the little girl eats her bologna, and dad's got to go to work. He's got to go work on the docks or try and scrounge up some money for food. And she says, "Mom, is there any more food left?" And mom starts to tell her, "No, honey, there's no more food left." And dad picks up his slice of bologna, drops it on her plate, and runs out the door saying, "Bye, I love you guys." And she's like, "No, you need the food for work." And he's already out the door. And I remember watching that scene as a teenager and thinking, that's the picture of the kind of dad I want to be. I
Mm-hmm.
want to be the dad. Like, it doesn't matter who eats first, but if we're down to one piece of food, I'm eating last.
Yeah.
Like that's the kind of love that not only God has shown us, but we should be exhibiting for our families,
Mm-hmm.
right? If there's one piece of food left, who gets it? And I think that in reality shows our selfishness or our selflessness. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a challenging thing to think through in the way that we spend our time and our resources, in who we play with and who we don't play with. Like all of that kind of stuff, I think is built into the DNA of fatherhood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man, that's some good stuff. I know we just went on a whole other route than what we planned on going, but it was important. Very important stuff. Very important stuff. So I want to go. I want to get back on track. What is Fatherhood Academy?
Yeah. So the story of Fatherhood Academy, it's about 5 years old. The story is not Fatherhood Academy. I've been working at a pregnancy clinic called U Medical for the past 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
And my sole job here has been to help guys navigate pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
So our clinic gives pregnancy tests, they give ultrasounds, lots of information, all that kind of stuff, STD testing. And a lot of times we'll have dads come in our clinic and just be deer in the headlights. Like
Mm-hmm.
this might have been an accident, we might have been trying for 10 years. Like what do I do now that a baby's on the way? So we talked through their 3 options. Every pregnancy has 3 options. One's pregnancy, carry and parent. One is to adopt your kid out, and one is to abort. Right?
Yeah.
Those are the 3 choices that come with every pregnancy. And
Mm-hmm.
so, how do I make a healthy choice in the midst of the emotions that come with? There's 2 blue lines on this pregnancy test.
Yeah.
What do I do now? Like, my life is changing forever, and I might not have intended it that way. So that was what I was brought on to do at U Medical, and so Fatherhood Academy is kind of the outgrowth of that program. We
Mm-hmm.
realized that walking with dads through pregnancy is good, but what then?
Yeah.
What do we do after she's had the baby and baby's a year old? How do I process the feelings that come with a 3-year-old when they're throwing temper tantrums,
Mm-hmm.
or a 15-year-old when they're throwing temper tantrums? Like,
Yeah.
how do I navigate those things? When I lose my job, where do I turn to kind of process those feelings and emotions? So we started doing dad training groups. We use a lot of material from the National Fatherhood Initiative. So they do a lot of research on dads and what makes them tick, what best practices. They're a great bunch of people over there. But we started running 24/7 dad groups, inside out dad groups
Yeah.
for dads who are incarcerated. And we're going to be launching another thing here soon. But Fatherhood Academy was something that was kind of always on the horizon. It was always the U Medical Fatherhood Program.
Yeah.
And once COVID hit, like all our restrictions here in Washington, we were pretty severely locked down here in Washington for quite a while. And I've got some friends over domestic violence services in a bunch of the government agencies here in town. And they were saying, there's a big spike of people with domestic violence calls.
Yeah.
There's a lot of guys out there that are isolated and they aren't entirely sure where to turn. They've got to stay inside. Maybe they've lost their job or they're laid off or whatever. What do we like? Where do we send them?
Mm-hmm.
And so, Fatherhood Academy was something we were planning for the future to kind of house all of our work with dad groups and that side of things outside of pregnancy and sexual health. That was all going to be kind of Fatherhood Academy. And so we said, you know what? Let's launch it a little bit early. Let's launch it a little bit early. And our tagline is your place for dad essentials.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a place for bad dads. It's not a place for guys who have absolutely nowhere to turn, right? It's a place for every dad.
Yeah.
We want to create a connection between the guy who needs a resource and that resource. So if they need a friend, we've got some dad groups where they can come, and even if they've already heard all the stuff before, they can come and sit around the table of guys who have been through life, who have different stories, who have different takes on world events, and say, hey, I need a friend. What do I do about this situation? Or, hey guys, I'm struggling with work, or I'm feeling anxious because my kids are at home with me all the time right now.
Yeah.
So we set up some virtual stuff for people to kind of be able to connect with us via Zoom or kind of a telehealth call. We call them mansultations, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the word we made wasn't really made up by us, but we found it online. No one else was really using it.
Yeah.
Mansultations is basically a consultation with another dad.
Yeah.
So if you need to connect with someone and talk through it, connect. If you need to hear a dad joke or see a friendly face, connect.
Yeah.
And the idea is just for any dad who needs to connect to reach out. So that's kind of what we've been working on. But yeah, the idea of Fatherhood Academy is your place for dad essentials.
Mm-hmm.
And that looks a lot of different ways.
Yeah. That's good, man. That's definitely something that's needed. My pastor, maybe in 2013, started a fatherhood group called Innovative Dads.
Oh, cool.
And they did he was doing a lot of the stuff that you were talking about, the 24/7 dad. We had a chapter of All Pro Dad. We did some stuff. We had a lot of the material from the National Fatherhood Initiative, and some good stuff, man, really good stuff. And that was like my first, because I had my first child in 2013. And so right when he started it, you know, I had been a dad for like 5 months. It was so it was everything for me, because like you say, I didn't know a lot of stuff about being a dad. I'm like, I think the first time I put on my daughter's diaper in the hospital, I put it on backwards. I don't even know how I did that. And it was like, and my mom was like, no, it goes the other way. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know, you know. And there was just so many things I didn't know, you know. Like you say, my wife and I, we alternated. Like one night she would sleep throughout the night and I would have to be in the living room with the baby, and you know, the next night vice versa. But I remember on one of my nights, she was crying. Man, I had no idea. I'm like, how do I stop a baby from crying?
Yeah.
You know, I'm doing everything. I'm trying to give her the food, and I'm patting her back. I'm holding her. I'm getting up. I'm walking back and forth. And I'm like, I don't know. You know, and I remember feeling so anxious. You know, I was like, I experienced that anxiety. Like, what do I do? You know, like, is she dying? You know, and so I started thinking there was something wrong with it. Like, maybe she's like hurt and she's about to die. So I called my mom. I'm like, hey, Mom, you know, I think I'm about to take her to the emergency room. She's like, what's going on? Why are you taking her to the emergency room? I'm like, she just won't stop crying. And so she says, maybe she has gas. I'm like, how would I know that? She was like, well, babies, if they're crying like that, sometimes they have gas. And she told me to get in the car. Got the baby. I got in the car and I went to get some Gas X.
Oh yeah.
And when I gave it to her, bro, it was done just like that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, just something that small. But I had no idea. And I wish, you know, at that time I had a dad that I could call, you know, and say, hey, Dad, you know, I don't know what to do, you know. But I thank God I did have my mom there, and I didn't want to wake my wife up about it. Right. And, you know, my mom walked me through that. And from there, you know, she used to always tell me, you know, at some point you'll learn your child's cry. You'll know when she's hungry. You'll know when there's something hurting her. You'll know if she just wants to be held. And I'm like, come on, all the cries sound the same. But as I got, you know, used to it, I'm like, wow, I really know right now she's hungry.
Yeah.
You know, just it just became something that you knew. And, you know, so things like Fatherhood Academy is so important as a resource for dads, because a lot of us don't know. We literally have children and we have no idea on how to take care of a child and how to troubleshoot. I call it troubleshooting all the time. You know, how do you troubleshoot, you know, when you have a baby, you know, and that baby will not stop crying or whatever the case may be. And yeah, man, I love what you're doing, man. It's so needed, man.
Yeah, thank you. And like I said, the reason I'm involved with all this is because I was going through something like that on my own.
Yeah.
Right? They don't come with manuals. They don't come with instructions. And I started at U Medical a month after my daughter was born.
Yeah.
So I was not the dad expert by any stretch of the imagination. I'm still not, right? But part of our journey is that we're doing this together, right? We aren't designed to do life by ourselves. And so having a place to turn, having some guys who aren't going to be like, oh, dude, you're a bad dad. Yeah. Like, gas addicts, right? No, that's a real question. Like, you need to be able to troubleshoot, you need a place to ask questions, and to even just process. Like, I'm really frustrated that my kid's not stopping crying. I need to get some sleep. Yeah. And just being able to put that out there and have people are like, yeah, that's hard. Try some gas X, burper, whatever you got to do. But having people to do that with is something that is kind of rare because we as guys in America, we aren't super good about having friends that are close. And
Exactly.
families, sometimes the reality is they're broken.
Yeah.
Uh, we as humans are very good at breaking stuff.
Yeah.
Uh, so having a place that's outside of all that, you can call and just be like, hey, this is what's going on. What do you think?
Yeah.
It's kind of the idea behind Fatherhood Academy. It's
Yeah.
dad essentials for every everyday guy.
Yeah, man. That's good, man. Or a little later on in the show, I'm gonna make sure you definitely give people, something that they could find, the ways that they can find Fatherhood Academy, because I would encourage any dad out there, if you feel like, you don't ever have to feel like you're alone, like every time I mentor a young man who has a child, my major thing is always don't ever be afraid to ask for help. I've been mentoring this young 23-year-old guy, and he just had his first child, and he came over to my apartment with this child. She's a little baby, maybe about 3 months old, and she was crying. She just seemed like she was she was just kind of having a fit. She wasn't really crying, but she wasn't comfortable. And so I could tell he really didn't know which way to, really know what to do with it. So I kind of got her from him, and I laid out a sheet on the floor, and I laid her on her stomach, and I just gently rubbed her back, and she was good. And I was just telling him why I was doing what I was doing, telling him, this is why you should do this, and he was like, man, I got to be honest, I don't really like I don't really know what to do with a baby.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, yeah, a lot of us don't, bro. I'm like, you don't have to don't feel embarrassed, and I kind of just talked with him about that. Like, bro, I didn't either, and it's okay. It's okay for you to say that. And you can tell he was just kind of embarrassed to tell me that. And I'm like, that's not embarrassing. Like, you've never had a child, and I know his background. And I'm like, I wouldn't expect for you to know these things, bro. I mean, and it's okay, and it just kind of made me think like, man, how many men feel like this, feel like, oh, I really need help. And I have even having a man, I have a man in front of me right now who has 3 children, and I still don't want to ask him for help.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, it's a lot, man. It's definitely something that we must continue to do. Like you said, we're not built to do life alone.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to manhood, man, and fatherhood. We have to be here for each other. And that was one of my things with this podcast. I wanted a place where men can come and just talk. We don't have to be embarrassed about anything. No one. I'm not here. I'm not a perfect dad. No one is. We all have our ways. We all have our struggles, but I love dads who are trying, and that are, because that's me all day. I'm trying to be better. I'm trying to learn more. I just thank God, for giving you that idea, because I looked into it. I went on your website. I'm like, this is some good stuff right here, man. It's definitely needed, bro. Definitely needed.
Yeah, we guys, we like to think that this stuff is written into our DNA.
Yeah.
We like to look like we got it all together.
Yeah.
And any guy who tells you he's got it all together when his baby's first born, he's lying.
Nah,
Or he's had super good training.
And
that's the reality. A good dad is a dad who learns.
Yeah.
He's a dad who tries, and he's a dad who's involved.
Yeah.
Because you can do all the learning, and if you're not involved, it's really hard to be a good dad, right? Yeah. And so, like, having those 3 pieces of learning how to learn, learning how to try things, and then learning how to be involved. Those three things are absolutely essential pieces, and that takes learning to be able to be good at that. Because my daughter needed very different things when she was 6 months old than she does right now when she's 4. Right? I don't need to burp my daughter anymore. I don't need to mash her bananas and stuff anymore. Right? She would probably, cry or something if I tried to burp her. She would say, "Dad, I'm not a baby." That's right, she's not. But right now she's learning how to read. How do I teach a kid how to read? I have no idea. But we're we're working through that together, and that's part of what it is to be a family too. Is we're doing life together.
Exactly. And how old is your daughter?
She's 4, or turning 4 next week.
Okay. Yeah. Woo, man. I already know what it's like. Like I said, my son is 4 and my youngest daughter is 3. So yeah, man, it's that age. I actually love that 4-year-old stage because they're so funny at that stage. There's like just starting to get into that question asking stage, where everything is, why is this, daddy? Or how do you know this? Or, my son asked me some of the most off the wall questions. And I'm like, where in your brain are you getting these things from? Man,
awesome.
He said this to me last week. He was playing around the house and he busted his eye open above his eye.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, we had to take him to the emergency room. So as I'm taking him to the emergency room, I wasn't home at the time. So when I had to come and pick him up, first thing he says to me, he says, "Daddy, it was really bad. And when it first happened, I couldn't even tell mommy what happened." And then he says, "If it happened to you, Daddy, in real life, it would hurt really bad." I'm like, in real life, what are you talking about, dude? And so we pull up to the hospital and we get out of the car. And there's like these birds making this noise. He's like, "Daddy, what are the birds saying?" I'm like, "I don't know." And he's like, "I know what they're saying. They're saying their sight words." And I'm just like, okay, man. Oh, like, what? Like, where do you come up with this? Like, where do you come up with the birds saying their sight words from?
Yeah.
And it just, at that, I love that 4-year-old stage, man. They are the most hilarious in that stage.
It's a lot of fun. I love it.
I want to go here.
Yeah.
What has been the biggest challenge of fatherhood for you?
Oh, yeah. Honestly, the biggest challenge for fatherhood for me so far has been medical issues. For me, there is nothing harder than watching my kids struggle and be in pain when I can't help them. My daughter when she was first born, she had a tongue tie that kept her from eating.
Yeah.
And that is, like, talk about trying to figure out what to do when your baby's crying. There was nothing that would help because she was just not getting enough food. She couldn't latch to breastfeed. She wouldn't take the bottle for milk because she couldn't. Like, it would keep her tongue from forming a latch on whatever. And she just, so she was always trying to eat. She was always hungry and she was always crying. And that was tough. That was pretty tough. And then about a year ago, she was diagnosed with celiac disease, which is an autoimmune disease to where when you eat gluten, like wheat or rye or anything like that, your body attacks your intestines. It kind of smooths out the surface of them to where your body just can't digest food anymore, like to the point where it should. And there was some pretty serious health complications that came with that. My son, when he was about 6 months old, he was diagnosed with a double respiratory infection in the middle of a snowstorm. So, like, I came home from work one day and my son just could not breathe. He was turning blue. He was like lethargic. He was sleeping all the time. And we were like, what in the world is going on with this kid? We lived way out in the country at that point,
Yeah.
and the snow was coming down. It was like we were getting dumped on for whatever. We lived in the desert. This never happens. But for whatever reason, that weekend we were getting like a foot of snow. It was nuts. We were like, if we don't get into town now, we're going to have an ambulance try and get into our house and out again if he takes a turn for the worse. And so we packed up and we went to the doctor, and the doctor was like, yeah, we need an ambulance here right now. And I was like, holy crap. And so they called an ambulance. My wife rode with my son, and they took him over to the hospital, and we all got there safe and sound. But then the doctors and nurses in the ER were like, he's probably fine with this treatment, and da-da-da. And every half hour or so, his oxygen level would crash. And we were like, no, he probably needs to stay here a little bit longer, because if we get trapped out there, like, it could be really bad.
Yeah.
And they finally admitted us. They saw what we were seeing. They were like, yeah, we need to. And so they diagnosed him with a double respiratory infection. And between those three incidents, the hardest thing for me is when I'm helpless, when I don't know what to do, or I know what's going on and I can't fix it, right? We try our hardest as dads to protect our families. But sometimes there are situations where it is just totally out of our control. Those are situations where often we turn to the things that make us feel good, right? My relationship's falling apart. I'm going to go sleep with this other person, or I'm going to turn to porn, or, my job is falling apart, so I'm just going to stop going. Like the hard moments like that where you're helpless, I think are the absolute hardest for me. Those are the moments that we really, truly have to turn to God, because we know that He is in control and we know that He is good. But that does not change the feeling of being hopeless. That doesn't change the suffering that can happen in this world. And so I know that's a very long-winded answer to your question.
That's good.
Yeah, that is by far the most challenging thing for me as a dad.
That's a good, man. That's definitely up there on the list, man. That helpless feeling, like you say, it's nothing like it. Knowing that you, like you say, when you even know what's going on, and with that, it's like, but even though I know, I don't know what to do. That's, man, yeah. That's my daughter broke her hand maybe about 2 years ago. Well, last summer, actually. She broke her hand, like, right when summer started, like the last day of school. She broke her hand. And man, I was like, what? And it was like just seeing the pain that she was in, and like, I don't know what to do. All I could do is take her to the professionals. But at times I wish that I could have done it. Like, I wish that I could just heal her in that moment, just make the hand just be back to normal. Right. And I remember, a couple of times, just listening to her explain her pain that she was in, and I cried a couple of times, like, man, God, like, what's, and she was so sad because she was planning on having going through swimming lessons that summer. Yeah. And when I told her that, the doctors were like, she couldn't swim or anything. And she was devastated, man. Right. And all she could just she asked me, why, Daddy? Why? Why does this have to happen to me? And I'm like, baby, it's only going to be for a couple of months, it'll get back better. And, you can still go through swimming lessons whenever, all of it is done. We just right now, you can't do it. I wish we could. Yeah. And just hearing her just like cry about that and just all of these things she kept saying, she felt like, all bad things always happen to me. I always hurt myself. And I'm like, don't say that stuff, man. it is a part of life, you know.
Right.
Yeah, that was hard, very, very, very hard to watch her go through that, man. So
Yeah.
yeah, and that's like nothing compared to what you went through. To me, that's like on another level right there, bro.
Yeah. I think it's a reality of like the world we live in. We try our absolute hardest to protect our kids, but like even what my kids went through, like I know dads who they've their wives miscarried, their girlfriends
Man.
miscarried, and
Mm.
their kids, other dads, their kids got cancer,
Yeah.
and the dads like there's an accident, and you know just the reality of our world being broken is
Mm-hmm.
so hard because I can't protect my kids from it, right? I can teach them the best way that I know how to turn to God because He is the only one who can turn something horrible and broken into something that is restored
Mm-hmm.
glory, right? Like He is the only one who can do that. But man, that sure doesn't change the fact that we're going through it, right? Uh,
Yeah.
my kids had it easy compared to those other situations,
Mm.
but still doesn't feel good,
Yeah.
right? It's
Definitely.
still hard to have those feelings, have those emotions, and to be the dad in the situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
To be the one who is there and helping lead the family even through grief and loss. Yeah, that's rough,
Yeah. Yeah.
challenging.
Now on a lighter note, let's go.
Yeah.
What has been your proudest moment as a dad?
Yeah. So you sent me this question, and I've been struggling all weekend with it, man. So I really enjoy my kids.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter, we call her our little monkey princess, and
Yeah.
she is princess. She is girly. She loves pink and like Frozen and all those things, right? And she loves to dance and sing and argue. She she is argue. And my son, he is. We call him our little paladin prince. I also call him my baby barbarian
Yeah.
because he likes to headbutt stuff. He likes to headbutt the wall. When he's eating, it's like fistfuls. You know, he's just a brute sometimes.
Yeah.
So I love hanging out with my kids. They are cool little people.
Yeah.
So it's hard to choose a thing that I'm the most proud of. But I will say that when my daughter was going through the celiac stuff, trying to figure out what she could and couldn't eat, what stuff was cross contaminated, what stuff that she is just never ever going to eat again, and watching her process the loss, I think that made me really, really, really proud because
Mm-hmm.
I could see that she wanted it, but I could also see her making a choice to not throw a fit.
Yeah.
Like you can almost see it in her of, okay, I'm not eating that macaroni and cheese again, or
Yeah.
I'm not eating those pretzels again. Even though I love those pretzels, I'm not going to eat those again because I know what they'll do to me. And so seeing her develop to the point where she's not baby anymore, she's starting to become a kid with
Yeah.
her own personality, and she's starting to make her own choices a little bit, as much as a 4-year-old can.
Yeah.
Um, but she reminds us, I can't have those goldfish. I can't have that chicken nugget. Like I can't do that anymore because that's got gluten. That's not good for
Yeah.
me. And so seeing that level of maturity increase, I think is really, really cool. I think that's one of my most proud dad moments.
Wow. Yeah, that's some good stuff right there, man.
Yeah.
We didn't go here. I want you to talk about marriage. How long have you and your wife been married?
Yeah. My wife and I, we celebrated 7 years back in March.
7 years. Okay.
Seven years.
That's what's
Yeah.
how's it been?
It's been good. Um, we have we started out on a learning curve,
Mm-hmm.
just like every couple out there,
Yeah.
right? Being married, being in a relationship, it takes practice. And it takes very well thought out guidelines, I think, to make it work well. My wife and I, we had a very wise premarital counselor sit down with us before we got married, and he said, "Have some rules to fight by. Have some rules to fight by." And he said that one of the most important rules that he and his wife ever implemented was when they're fighting to never use the D word.
Yeah.
And the D word was divorce, right? Yeah. There was never an option for a way out, which is one of the most important things I think about being married, as opposed to just dating or hanging out or even living together, is that you've made that solid commitment to be married to the other person for the rest of your life. It takes a lot to break that commitment. So for us, we had a good first year, and then the year on our first anniversary, we were packing up a U-Haul to move from Indiana out to Washington State.
Yeah.
And we got a hitch installed on our little red Pontiac Grand Prix, which you should never put a hitch on one of those bad boys. But we drove that little Pontiac across the country with a little 4x8 trailer that contained everything that we owned.
Yeah.
We felt that we were supposed to be out here. And after we made that move, it was tough because my job fell through. The job that I was supposed to be working fell through. They didn't want to pay me until we actually started selling stuff, which, you know, if you're putting hours in, that's not cool. Yeah. I still had bills to pay. And we had just moved across the country. So we had incurred some expenses with that. And she was rightfully upset. I think we moved very quickly. And there was a moment in that time of just struggling with the move, processing through that, where we were at each other's throats. And both of us, we weren't entirely sure why. I think both of us went through a season of depression or just grief and loss a little bit, because our hopes and dreams, they didn't work out the way they were supposed to. And I remember sitting down with my wife and I said, "Do I need to buy you a plane ticket home? Not that we were getting divorced, but like, do I need to send you back?" And she was like, "No, I'm here. I'm committed to you. Like, we are husband and wife and we will get through this." And having that conversation, we were sitting down by the river at a park at a picnic table. Having that conversation with her, I think, was a major upside for our marriage. Like, we look back on that and we say that was one of the darker periods. Since then, we've had 2 kids. Pregnancy is, you know, pregnancy is what it is. It's not easy all the time. Having kids can be tough, but when both people are in it 100%, it makes it easier to navigate those things, right? And I feel like talking about it in that way makes it seem like we've got it all figured out, and that's absolutely not true. You know, both people need to make the conscious choice to be married and to put the other's needs before their own. Yeah. That's the model that we're given in the Bible. In Ephesians 5, Paul says, "Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church." Well, Jesus was on a cross. He was executed and tortured for the church. And he took the weight of their sins upon himself and resurrected again, right? That is the way he loved the church. Even while we were still his enemies, he loved us. And he also says, "Wives, submit to your husband," right? And he points back to creation, where God says to Adam, "This is your helpmate, the person who is to complement and come alongside you." And those 2 things, both of them mean 100%, right? Both husband and wife are to love 100%. One is not domineering or abusing that, but it is a beautiful picture of both people coming together and becoming one and complementing each other where the other is lacking, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that is such a beautiful picture of what marriage should be by God's design. And that is not the reality all the time, right? We're learning and we're growing in that. But it's good.
Yeah.
And again, that's another long answer for you. But
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
marriage is
Stuff.
a beautiful thing when both people are committed to it. And God has blessed me with a wife who loves me and loves our family and who is 100% committed to our marriage. And that is such a benefit because it frees me to both be a husband and a father to my family, but it also frees me to come alongside some dads,
Yeah.
other guys who are going through it right now. And because my home life is stable, because we've intentionally done that, because God has blessed us with that, we're able to then pour into other people.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what we are supposed to do. That's what we're called to do,
Mm-hmm.
is to walk alongside other people,
It's good.
right? And especially people who don't know Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
We aren't spiritually healthy if we don't know Jesus. And so coming alongside people who don't know him and say, hey, look, this guy over here, he died for your sins, even though you were his enemy.
Mm-hmm.
And all he requires of you is for you to place your trust and your faith in him. And he promises that blood debt that you owe, he's already paid the price for that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's such a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And man, that is the beauty of marriage, man. You know, the beauty of marriage to me is the fact that it's so ugly.
Yeah.
You know, the beauty of it, you know, the beauty of the relationship between Christ and the church, it's so beautiful because it's so ugly.
I love
You know,
that. That's
like
great.
it's so ugly, man. You know, and I tell people that all the time. You know, marriage isn't about you being happy. You
Mm-hmm.
know, marriage isn't about you being just this, oh, everything in my life is just always perfect and good. You know, like, no, man, marriage is to help you grow into
Yep.
a better man and a better woman, you know, to learn how to be patient with another person,
Yeah.
is to learn to be to love unconditionally, you know, because in marriage we're gonna make each other upset. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we're gonna have certain things that we do that just gets on each other's last nerve, you know,
Yep.
but in the end we still love each other. You know, we can still, but we learn to compromise with one another. uh
Yeah.
we these are all the things that you learn, and through that, you know, you just, your character grows. You know,
Yeah.
you work through hard situations and you become stronger. You go through those dark times, and in that, you know, you come out, you come out polished, you know. And it's those things about marriage that I love the most. And it's
Yeah.
hard just to be, it when you're honest, it's a hard thing, you know, especially when you didn't grow up seeing the example of it,
Right.
you know. And for me and my wife, we, neither one of us seen that, you know, healthy relationship between our mom and our dad, and
Yeah.
or with our moms with any man, period, you
Right.
know. And it just, it's a hard thing for us, so we came into it broken.
Mm-hmm.
And we could have done more to learn about it, but it is what it is now. We're married and we're going to work through this thing. We're going to love each other. You know, we've been together for 11 years now, you know, since she was 18 years old and I was 20.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I'm 31 now and she's 29, and we're still learning each other, you know, and that's the beauty of it. You know, we're still learning things about each other. We're still learning how to love each other more. And I'm finding myself loving my wife even more now, seeing her grow into a woman now. You know, I known her since she was 18,
Yeah.
you know, a young woman, you know, almost like a girl just coming out of high school. And now she's like growing into this woman. And been able to watch her growth, and she's been able to watch mine, and neither one of us were in Christ when we met. So that was even the most beautiful part about it. We were with each other before Christ.
Yeah.
And we've both seen the transformation of our lives, man. And, it's beautiful, and it's been ugly. The beautiful, most beautiful part about it has been so ugly over the years at times.
Yeah.
But we've learned to love each other, man. Just really be able to love each other. And now we have children. We can teach our children and show them, man. But definitely, I love marriage, man. I can have a whole podcast on that too.
I love it. Yeah. So two things that I've come across that statements that I love is marriage is not about you, right?
Yeah.
It's not about you and your happiness. That there is a time for your marriage outside of even your family.
Mm-hmm.
At the very least, it's not about you.
Yeah.
It's not her, right? And from just a statistic research standpoint, our relationship with our wife, the mother of our kids, is the number one factor in whether or not, or in how involved we are, right? It's not even a legal thing. Just, I'm out of the house, I'm out of the house. I'm not there for bedtime, right? And the second thing is, I think it was Timothy Keller. He said that marriage is two broken people being made into one.
Yeah.
And how can we expect that to not be messy?
Yeah.
Right? Two broken sinners being made into one. I mean, that's a recipe for disaster outside of Christ.
Exactly, man. Exactly. That's some good stuff right there, man. For those listening, all these things on marriage, don't let it scare you away, but let it, if that's where you're going, what you're headed toward, and you have that man or that woman that you do want to spend the rest of your life with and that you do love, go for it, do that, but do it in Christ. I don't know how you would do it without Christ. I don't know how, but you can go for it if you want, but I wouldn't advise that. But in Christ, I believe all things can be done. When two people are committed to, Christ and his ways, I believe that you can find your way through anything, and you will grow exponentially. Like you will really grow. Like I've grown so much from 2012 when I got married, man. I've just from life experiences, but a lot of it was just through marriage. I've learned so much about myself through my wife, through her revealing things to me about myself and helping me to change those things and pointing them out to me, and it hurts at times, for a person that you love to point out those ugly things within yourself and deal with you and say, no, you're wrong. And you're selfish. You only think about yourself sometimes. And as much as I get so angry when she would say stuff like that, but I can't deny it. I'm like, no, you know what? She's right. She's right. And I work to fix those things. Marriage, it's like I say, man, that could be a whole podcast in itself. Yep. Marriage, man. I love it though, bro. I love it. I got two more questions for you. I want you to, what if you could go back and talk to the 18-year-old Brandon, what advice would you give him?
Yeah. So I'm going to be real with this one. I hope that's all right. But
yeah.
I would tell him to quit watching porn.
Yeah. That's real.
Just
super real.
Straight up. Because I was 13 years old.
Mm-hmm.
My friend, I was over at his house for a sleepover. And he was like, hey, look at this. And up on his computer, it's dial-up, right? So it took like 45 minutes to load one picture. but it was the first pornographic picture I had ever seen in my life. And it hooked me.
Oh, yeah.
It felt in a time when I needed comfort, in a time when I was figuring out my identity, in a time that I was figuring out what it meant to be a man, it hooked me. Mm-hmm. Like it does to so many guys. And for most of my life, at least up until my early 20s, I convinced myself that it was not a big deal.
Yeah.
Right? It wasn't a big deal for me. It wasn't a big deal for anybody else. Like, it was just something that I did in the comfort of my own home, and it was private. And I convinced myself, I had bought into those lies. It was absolutely one of the most damaging things that I ever picked up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I haven't tried hard drugs. I
Yeah.
haven't tried a bunch of stuff in life. I picked up this thing that people told me was innocent.
Yeah.
That it might be a little bit shameful. That, you know, who's really gonna know? I picked something up that was so destructive
Yeah.
for the way that I viewed relationships and sexuality, that it was so hard to put down because of that.
Mm-hmm.
It had hooked me, and I bought the lies because I wanted to buy the lies, and it was so hard to put a stop to that piece of my life. Um, but later, I had met my wife. We had gotten engaged, and I had to have the conversation of, look, this is what I've watched,
Yeah.
right? This is something I've dealt with for most of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, even here at the Fatherhood Academy, one of the first questions that they asked me when I came to sign on for this job was, so what's your relationship with porn?
Yeah.
That was a job interview, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it was, I was a little bit taken aback, because who asked that in a job interview? It was like a panel interview, and I was sitting in a room with a bunch of women who were older than me, and it was an awkward question, but it was such a wise question, because it is so prevalent in our society. It is something that so many guys get hooked into, and over the years, I've watched the damage, it's the pain it's caused. Um, for my wife, for my family, and I've had to heal from that.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, man. That's one of those topics, man, that's so real, you know.
Yeah,
And I can attest to the same thing, even still to this day, it's a daily struggle, man. Like really just trying to wean myself and like just really push it to the side, because like you say, for over half of my life, you know,
yeah,
it's been a part of my life. And like everything you said was just so on point, because it was like there's nothing wrong with it, growing up, and you just like, well, it's innocent, I'm not hurting anyone, I'm not doing anything.
I'm not catching an STD, right? I'm not going through
Exactly.
break. Uh,
Exactly.
yeah,
and
it's fire.
and
Uh,
it's easy to think that stuff, man.
yeah.
It's
But
easy,
one
man.
of the nurses that I work with, she talks about sex and sexuality as a fireplace. But she says marriage is a fireplace and sex is fire. So inside of a fireplace, it can be something that comforts you. You can cook your food on it. You can use it as a tool. If you take that same burning log out and you drop it on your couch in your house, that's a recipe for disaster. And that is absolutely 100% what happens with sex and sexuality within us as men, because we take the burning log out and we drop it on the couch, whether it's porn or paying for sex or sex trafficking, or even just wrapping our identity up in how many people we sleep with.
Exactly.
Those things will absolutely 100% wreck our lives, and it wrecks our ability to have a functional, healthy relationship. And
Mm-hmm.
we convince ourselves that it's harmless. And
Mm-hmm.
if I had one piece of advice to give my 18-year-old self, it would be that.
That's
Quit.
that's so real, man. So real. That is like the best advice I think I've ever heard. Like literally, because it's a vice. A real, I'm talking about, and most people who might even listen to this might say, "Oh, it's not that serious," but it really is, especially, you know, I was just talking with a friend the other day, and I was telling him, you know, I wish I had never had sex before marriage. Like, I really understand now why God tell us to not do that, because now that I'm married and knowing that I've experienced sex outside of my wife, now a lot of my temptation comes from the fact that I know that I have touched another woman, and I might see another one, that same woman, or I might see someone that reminds me of that same woman, and it's just an awkward feeling. You know, it's awkward. It can be tempting, and it's just, I wish I just never had experience. I wish the only experience I ever had was with my wife, because it would be so much more. It would just be so much more better on my mentally,
Yeah.
and also spiritually, you know, because now I do have that temptation, because I'm like the Bible calls it, like he says, Adam knew Eve. I wish I never knew any other woman. Like, I
Yeah.
don't, like, I wish I didn't have the knowledge of what it's like to be with another woman. You
Right.
know, so when I'm talking with young guys and they're telling me that they're virgins, I'm like, bro, do you understand how, like, proud of you I am, and how much I beseech you, my brother, please, with everything in you, do not give that to anyone outside of your wife. And a lot of the guys look at me like I'm crazy, and they're like, you don't understand, you know, because you're married. And I'm like, that's why I'm telling you, because I am married. And
Yeah.
I didn't follow this advice. You know, I didn't have someone telling me that. And now my marriage is harder than what it should be, because I had those experiences. And I'm trying to save you. And it's not, and it goes past just physically having sex with a woman. That pornography is like, bro,
So many levels. That could be
that's
another.
like, man, that's like the biggest fight of my life. Like, nothing bigger, like a bigger fight than that, because it's something, because it's so private, you
It's so
know,
private. It's free and it's addicting.
and
And it tricks
addicting.
your brain. And you know, my wife, when we first got married, this was not a part of her life at all. She was a virgin. This is not something that was a part of her wheelhouse. And that was such a gift she gave to me.
Yeah,
And
man.
I still have feelings of
Mm-hmm.
regret that I wasn't able to give her the same gift.
Wow.
Right? I can never take back those hours of porn that I watched. I can never take back the sin that I put out, that I did to myself and really participated in viewing that stuff, right? Because it's so much bigger than just me and my wife. It's also something in our society that drives sex trafficking, right? It funds sex trafficking, and all of those things. Like, we know the research, but we still participate,
Stuff is
right?
real,
I,
bro.
yeah. What one piece of
Real, bro.
advice: quit watching porn.
Yeah,
I
man.
himself. I don't know if he would have listened, right? But I like to think he would have.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Wow, bro. Yeah. We can, for those listening, like I always like to say, please, if you're listening to this, follow this advice. It could be, you know, it could save your relationship, it could save your marriage, you know, it could save your children, you know, it could save, you know, I think at times we don't really, I don't think we, when it comes to sin, we don't take sin serious sometimes, because we don't see the immediate result of it in that moment. But sometimes, though, that the sin can affect us and those around us years down the road, you know, and I think we would be more discouraged by sin if we seen the results right then and there. But that's
Yeah.
just not the way as it is, you know. So I think we let things linger on for years, man, and leave things, you know, untouched. And
Yep.
we don't really start to try and fix it until that thing happens, you
Right.
know, until that sin isn't so private anymore and it becomes public. And now we want to stop it.
Browsing history.
Yeah, man. So
Public, right? Jesus said, chop off your hand if it's causing you to sin. Gouge out your eye. Please don't literally do that, right? But
yeah.
I would say for anybody listening, for anybody watching, if this is something you struggle with, reach out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Talk to somebody about it. Do it in a private way to where it's not a thing to where you need to air all your dirty laundry, but to where you can talk through it and even disagree and argue about it, right? Engage it. Don't ignore it.
Yeah.
Because ignoring it is so dangerous.
That's real, man. That's super real. Last question. Is there anything you would like to say to any other young father out there listening right now?
I may have jumped ahead. I just said it, actually. Yeah. None of us are born great dads. None of us are born men. None of us are born fantastic husbands. All of those things are things that we learn and acquire as we grow and mature. It is entirely possible to be a 50-year-old boy. Mm-hmm. That doesn't happen because you turn 18. It is entirely possible to have a 70-year marriage that is horrible.
Yeah.
It is entirely possible to be a dad for 60 years and to never talk to your kids, right?
Crazy.
Those are real. We live in a world that is broken. The reality of our world is that relationships fall apart. The reality of our world is sometimes we hurt our kids. Mm-hmm. Right? If you are struggling in any of those things, even with the guilt of some of those things, maybe they happened a long time ago. If you're struggling with those things, reach out. Don't do it by yourself. Reach out to some guys who are passionate about being dads, passionate about being husbands. Even if you want to be like, look, I don't think marriage is for me, and you want to talk about that, why? Or what's the difference between being married and living together? If you want to talk about those things, that's great. That's awesome. Lean into that. Leaning into those things and learning about what makes this world go around in a healthy way is so important. That's such a valuable thing for us as dads to engage in. Ignoring problems, being passive with them, is a surefire setup for failure. If you want to make sure that you fail, man, husband, and father, be passive. Ignore your problems. Don't reach out for help when you need it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think for anybody listening, that's my takeaway. I work with a lot of dads all the time, and it is so hard sometimes to take that first step and just be like, hey, this is what I'm struggling with.
Yeah.
Right? But often that is the hardest part. After that, you got an ally. After that, you got a friend. After that, you got a safe place to go.
Yeah.
But all the way up until that, nobody knows. We're good at putting on that mask.
Very good. Very good, man. Wow. Yeah, this was a treat for me, man.
Me too, man. Thanks for having me on. This is fun.
Yeah, this right here was a treat for me, and I always say, Dad, Can We Talk has nothing to do with me, man. I'm just a regular old dude. And, and I'm just still trying to learn, and every time I bring someone on, man, I don't know how many people would actually take the time to listen and take from it, but I take something from every time I sit down with someone, man, and I got a lot out of this, man. A lot of good things that I'll definitely take away, and we definitely got to stay in contact, man. I like adding to my accountability and my support group as a dad and as a man, and also as a minister, man. I need other people spiritually in my corner, man, that I just like having people, because my man's on the east side over here might not be available to me, so I might need somebody on the north side or on the west side or on the south. I need someone in all different places in case I can't reach certain people.
Right.
So, yeah, man, we definitely got to stay in contact, bro. Seriously.
Love it.
Definitely appreciate you coming on the show, man. Give everyone your social medias and your website and everything so that they can know how to contact you about the Fatherhood Academy.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll do the Fatherhood Academy thing first.
Mm-hmm.
Fatherhood Academy, search it on Facebook, Instagram, and online. You should find it. The website is fatherhood.academy. Super easy. No .com, no .org, nothing like that. Fatherhood.academy. And that's how people can sign up for the mansultation, for getting in touch with me, any of that kind of stuff. Cool. So we should be pretty easy to find. We've got a pretty active Facebook and Instagram. I like to try and put out useful things. So things that, like, a couple weeks ago, we put out a blueprint on how to build a blanket fort with your kids. Everybody's in the house right now. So just some fun ideas like that. We talk about fun stuff. We talk about serious stuff. If anybody wants to find me personally, I'm less active on my personal stuff, but it's at Seminary Dad because I'm in seminary and I'm a dad. And probably after I graduate next year, that'll be a little bit more active. But either way, both of those ways come to me. So
sounds good, man. Sounds good. Well, yeah, man. I'll definitely after this, make sure I write you, man. Get your number, man. We gotta stay in contact. Seriously, man.
I love it. Thanks for having me on, Anthony.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you, and I appreciate all the listeners out there, all the supporters of Dad Can We Talk. You guys can find us on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. I actually got the website live now at www.dadcanwetalk.weebly.com. And you can find, I try to post, I need to update it. I need to add the last 2 episodes. I'm trying to post all the episodes on the website. I actually have a little widget on the website where you can listen to all of the episodes right there on the website. So for those of you that haven't realized that the website is live, it is. And I'm getting some more shirts ordered. That's my main thing. I had someone write me, 3 people wrote me today about shirts. So I'm definitely trying to put in some more orders of shirts. I got a lot of people waiting on some shirts. So I'll definitely have to get your size too. So I'll send one out to you when I do get some more in. And yeah, man. So for all of those out there listening, continue to listen, continue to support. I appreciate you guys. And you guys be blessed. All right, Brandon. Appreciate you, man.
See you guys. Thank you.